In this lesson we're going to talk about vehicle rigging. We're not going to build a full-blown rig, but I will show you some basics so that you can get a good pose for your portfolio. Now the first thing I want to do is set up my file so that I can work neatly. So pressing my space bar, I have my 4 views, which is also available over here. We're going to be rigging the Viper. And we're going to rig it so that your wheels will turn, they'll rotate, and you'll be able to translate your vehicle as well as getting some suspension in there. We'll be touching on keyframes for animation. We're not planning on doing any animation per se in this modeling class, but we will learn how to keyframe so that you can pose your character, in this case a vehicle. Now the next thing I'm going to do is make sure that my image planes are off. There's a little icon right up here that you can depress for shutting those off. And in my perspective view, I'm going to turn on my grid. I'm going to select my Viper. It's all in parts, and bring up my outliner. And you can see there's a lot of different parts here. So we're just simply going to group those together. You can find that under Edit, Group, Options, Preserve Position, yes, Parent, yes, Group. And I'm going to name this Viper Geometry, or Geo in this case. Keep my names nice and short. Maya tends to do a little bit better if you do not capitalize the first letter, but you can capitalize the second. So I'll have to do that from now on. I think it'll be fine for this particular group. Now once we have all that grouped in there, we can come back here and rename these objects as well, but you don't need to. When you are rigging, and you'll cover this in your rigging class, you want to work very neat so that your animators who follow you will have no problem being able to determine what it is that you're doing and not grab the wrong pieces to set keyframes on. Okay, so if you have your outliner open, your objects selected, I'll just show you how to rename these all together. Sometimes it takes a long time. If you go right up here, select on the little icon here, go down to rename. It gives you a little box where you can type in, I'm going to put Viper underscore, and it just renames all of my objects associated with the Viper with some numbers. So if you don't want that numbering system, you don't need to rename them like that, but that's typically what I do so that every part associated with a Viper has its name. So the next thing I'm going to do, I've already deleted my history and all, but there's a couple things that you want to make sure. I'm going to go into my side view, and I'm just going to make sure that my Viper is sitting on top of the world grid, and so I take all my parts and I move those up. I don't know if you can see that in the capture, but I have my crosshatch right here, and mine is sitting on top of the grid, the tires on top of the grid, and then go ahead and delete history on those. We're going to be using this shortcut a lot, and for those of you Maya users, I'm sure you know how to build your own custom shelf. But those of you who do not, you can go ahead in here and create a shelf with your name on it, and then I'll show you quickly how to build that. You can go right over here and click on New Shelf and go ahead and put your name in there. And say OK. You can see it pop up in here. And then to add those little icons, let's go ahead and add history, delete history. make sure that your tab is selected, and you just hold down Control Shift and then select on that functionality that you want to add. So let's go up here to Edit, Delete Type, and I'm going to hold down Control Shift and click on it. And when I release, then I can see that the delete history is in my new shelf, so I can use that. And I'm going to go ahead and delete this shelf. Do that right here. Okay, go back to my shelf that I've been building. Okay, the next thing we want to do is position our pivot point in the center of gravity for our vehicle. This is critical when you're getting into the movement of the car. You'll want to be able to move that vehicle from the center of gravity and not the floor or up high. It needs to be located in the center. So I'm going to go ahead and select in my outliner on my group node, ViperGL, and I'm going to come right up here, and I don't see it listed. So I'll depress my Control and Shift and select on Center Pivot. We're going to be using that one, so go ahead and add it to your shelf. And now we're going to use it. So when I click on my W key, you can see that now that is centered in the vehicle. But it is including my whip here, and I don't want that. I want it to just include the body of the vehicle in that selection. So I'm going to lower that, oops, press D on my keyboard and lower that just a little bit so that I get a better center of gravity on my vehicle. Okay. Alright. The next thing we want to do is make sure that the X and or the Z and the X are centered on that grid. So I'm going to go ahead in here and select on my top-down view, go ahead and show my grid, and I'm going to align my pivot point with the center of the grid. Just hold my X key down, well, depress my D, which moves the pivot, and my X key, and now I'm going to go ahead and align that to the grid. Alright, so now I'm happy with all three axes, and I'm going to come back here to my perspective view and turn on a shaded mode. The next thing we want to do is make sure that our vehicle is facing down Z. So if you go to your forward, your front view, my vehicle is facing the front. So, but you do want to make sure that you are aligning with the coordinate that's used in the game code. So if you're not sure, ask first. Otherwise, standard is Z forward. So you can look right here, down here in the lower left of your viewport to see what direction the Z-axis is going. And you can see that my vehicle is aligned with that. Okay, so now anytime we have an organizational node or a group node that we don't want animation on, we want to go ahead and lock that down. I'll show you how a little bit later as we lock them all down. But here, now that I've positioned this, I want to make sure that the pivot is zeroed. So I don't see that in my shelf, so I'm going to go ahead and Control Shift and Control Shift modify freeze transforms right up in here. And I also want to check my options to make sure that my options are correct. And that's fine. Close that. So anytime I use that now, I'll be able to know the options are correct. Okay, the next thing we want to do is start building our hierarchy. Now, as we talked about in class, vehicle rigging is all about hierarchy. So having accurate hierarchy is really imperative to get your different parts moving. So the first thing we're going to do is start building our groups for our wheels. Now I have my parts in layers, so they're easy to access. If I turn off the body and the interior lights, I'm going to go ahead and select on my different wheels, and Control G groups those, and I'm just going to rename those. This would be front, left, wheel group. Oops, I'm still using capital letters. Alright, so when you're grouping things and setting up a hierarchy, you want to make sure to label things groups and later controllers so that people who are following you, animators specifically, will be able to determine very easily by looking in the outliner what's what. Hopefully they won't be doing that. Hopefully they'll just be going with the controllers, but it's easy to work clean so that anybody who needs to follow you can do that easily. Now the next thing is we're going to set our pivot points, and we're just going to center those for the time being. So I've already grouped these, so I'll just go ahead and center my pivot points. And later on we'll talk about accurately placing the pivot points, as we don't want to rotate on the center. We want to rotate where the wheel actually rotates, and tie rods and all the other parts that go in here. That is more on the inside of the wheel than the center. Additionally, when you're rigging characters, got a problem there. You want to stay standard with what's already existing in the industry. When you're rigging, left and right are from the perspective of the character. So if you're in the driver's seat, or you are this character, this vehicle, then this would be your left and that would be your right. Go ahead and replace that wheel. So going forward with your naming convention, you want to make sure that L and R are pretty standard in the industry, F and B front and back, so that you can be consistent with what's already known. Okay, now I think what we'll do to further clean this up is, let's turn on our geometry again, is go ahead and group this because there's so much of it. Control G, we're going to group this as a separate group inside here so that we don't have to look at so much of it. And we'll have to reset our center of gravity pivot point again here, but I think this will be easier for us to look at in this tutorial. So I'll just rename Vibrageo. And then we'll just center this for now. And reposition it like we did. Okay, D on our keyboard. Just going to move that down to in the middle of the roof and the tires and the vehicle there, front and back. And then in the top-down view, I'm going to go ahead and line that up again. D on my keyboard, X, moving one axis at a time, checking both the Z and the X, and back to perspective. Alright, so we're set on that particular hierarchy.